Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, the most underappreciated and overworked YouTube creator around, Pavarotti. And I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer though, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander anyone, so let's get into it. In tonight's episode, we're going to discuss some things that's been on my mind for a little bit, so I wanted to get my opinions out there on these matters. And I'm going to touch on a couple of different subjects. The first subject I'm going to touch on, though, is this information that's kind of making its way around there about Mr. Bryan Kohberger possibly breaking in to the WSU chemistry lab when he went north on Nevada Street, and he was unseen for about 5 minutes, and then he came back down south on Nevada Street, made a right towards 270, and then showed many videos. He didn't go east, he went west, and it's validated by no video footage. But it's been suggested that during that time frame where he went north on southeast Nevada Street, that during that few minute span, the master thief, the quickest criminal in the history of criminals, I mean, this guy has the ability to go into a house, unalive 4 people with a knife inside of just a few minutes, silently, and then leave like a thief in the night. Now it's been suggested that during that few minute time frame, he could park his car, break into the WSU chemistry lab, locate among their many chemicals, industrial cleaning supplies that would take care of human product, such as blood and other potential evidence that may get in his car for the atrocity he's planning on committing. He could locate those products in that chemistry lab, I guess in the dark, because it's, dang near 3 in the morning. But he could locate those chemicals that fast, get them out, and get them in his car, and then head over to commit the atrocity. That's being suggested. So let's talk about that for just a minute. We've got Mr. Howard Bloom, because I remember when this all started. Okay, he went on the Drunk Turkey Show before his book was published. And during that conversation on the Drunk Turkey Show, he casually let out some potential bombshell, unheard of news about what he was investigating at the time. He said it was the potential that Mr. Bryan Kohberger had broken into that WSU chemistry lab. Now, he didn't say the night of the atrocity, he just said at some point. But he had broken into the chemistry lab, and he had taken some chemicals, and they were investigating whether or not Mr. Kohberger was trying to build a bomb. Okay, so now he's not just a serial unaliver, he's a domestic terrorist, is what he was suggesting. And he said the FBI was looking into it, he was looking into it, others were looking into it, everybody's looking into it. Now, later on, I seen Mr. Bloom on a completely different channel several months after his book had been published, and he recanted the potential Bryan Kohberger breaking into the chemistry lab to build a bomb story. Said, no, it turns out that didn't pan out. Just nothing, no evidence on it. Which, imagine that. But then, other content creators with inside sources have come to their own conclusion. When not only did he break into the chemistry lab, but he did it when he was north on southeast Nevada Street for those few minutes, right before the atrocity. Fastest thief in history. And that's what they really suggested, and they've suggested it several times now. Well, let's talk about that for just a minute, okay? Now, according to the prosecution, Mr. Kohberger visited the area of the King Road residence 12 times before the atrocity. And in a suggesting way that he was stalking them, okay? But no, they softened that language since the prosecution clearly said he wasn't stalking the victims. Now they've changed the language now, and the guilty narrative out there is he was surveilling. Yeah, he wasn't stalking because they didn't know he was stalking them, so it couldn't be stalking. Which is, excuse my French, asinine. Okay? The prosecution said that Bryan Kohberger didn't stalk the victims because they know Bryan Kohberger wasn't stalking the victims. That's not what their case is against Bryan Kohberger. Y'all just are too dense to see it. Excuse me, I'm not trying to denigrate anybody, but anybody that doesn't see that by now is, I got to say, they have a mental block or they're dense. One of the two. The case against Bryan Kohberger that they refuse to put out there because the gag order has nothing to do with anything that the guilters are thinking that it has to do with. It's weird. But that comes to light every time they do something in court, like say he wasn't stalking the victims. All it does is verify everything that I've said, because I'm able to predict things in this case very accurately. And I'm up to 5 predictions that have come true in this case. Y'all don't want me to go through all of them again, because I most certainly can, but they weren't little predictions. They were pretty big predictions, and they came to fruition exactly like I said they would. Maybe I'll do a video. I don't know. Remind everybody. But the only reason I can make those predictions is because I have this. I'm not a swami. I have a key. I have a key. I look through this case with the eyes of somebody with a key to the case. And the key to the case is the motive in the case. And I've always had that key. And when you look at the case through that key, then you can make predictions in the case. And those predictions are bound to come true because you're looking with the correct key. Nobody else wants to look with the key. It's fine. They look with their own intuition, and it's just not going to unlock any doors for them. Sorry. But I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm not that smart. It's just I have a key that I've been using since the start of this thing, and that key opens the doors. Back to what I was saying. Let's talk about it for just a minute. The prosecution says he surveilled this house for 12 occasions, planned this thing to a T, even though he drove his own car to the scene. We'll forget about that for just a minute, but he planned this thing to a T. And during his planning now, they've added this extra caveat. During all this planning, he knew that no matter how careful he was, he's bound to get blood evidence in his vehicle. And when he gets away and drives off into the countryside, then he's going to have some type of evidence in his vehicle he's got to get rid of. And he knows this because he's thought it out in advance. So in his critical thinking and planning, he decides the only way to get rid of this blood evidence is with industrial cleaners, because that's what gets rid of blood evidence. No, I mean, there are chemicals that gets rid of blood, but they're easily available in pure form, not in a chemistry lab, but just about anywhere. Okay, and we'll talk about that more here in just a minute. But let's talk about a chemistry lab just for a second. What is a chemistry lab's purpose? Is it to store cleaning supplies? No, they have them, right? They have cleaning supplies, like most other departments in a school has cleaning supplies. But do they have ready-made chemical compounds like luminol or amino black? Because that would be something that somebody that was cleaning up blood and trying to get rid of the evidence would need, right? Because they got to be able to see what it is that their naked eye can't see to know where to clean. So he must have broken into the lab to get luminol or amino black. The problem with that, folks, is this is not a forensics lab. This is a college chemistry lab. Now, what is the purpose of a chemistry lab? Well, it is to create compound solutions. So the chemistry lab has chemicals that are used to create solutions. Luminol, amino black, those are compound solutions. Those are the byproduct of the chemicals you'd find in a chemistry lab, right? Those are the products in a chemistry lab that you would use to make those substances. They wouldn't have the finished product sitting on a shelf. It's not a forensics lab. But let's say even the small, tiniest chance that they do carry, say, luminol. Now, Bryan Kohberger's got to go in there in the dark again at dang near 3 a.m., in a matter of minutes, locate in the midst of all those chemicals a finished product of luminol, and he has to locate some cleaning supplies, according to these folks. The odds of him being able to do that in a few minutes is, the odds of him being able to commit the atrocity in a few minutes. It's just not likely. But also it's absolutely ridiculous because you don't need specialty cleaning supplies to eliminate blood evidence. Okay? There's two compounds out there that does the job. Probably the only two compounds out there that'll do the job. And let's talk about those compounds real quick.
Well, the first one would be bleach, and we all know about bleach. Bleach is available in pure form at any grocery store around, so you wouldn't need to break into a chemistry lab to get bleach, obviously. The other one is the best chemical for removing blood is hydrogen peroxide. It effectively breaks down blood stains due to its oxidizing properties and is a widely used option for removing both fresh and old blood stains from fabric. The inside of his car was not leather, it was fabric, so hydrogen peroxide would have been the chemical of choice. And any studying that he would have done would have told him this, and hydrogen peroxide is obviously available everywhere, and you wouldn't have to go to a chemistry lab at a college to steal it.
Okay, well, maybe you're right there, Pavarotti. So maybe he did break in, to get a hold of that luminol. Maybe he knew exactly where it was, and he needed that because, as he's cleaning up all the blood evidence out of his vehicle when he's out in the woods there in Johnson County somewhere, he would have needed that luminol to make that blood glow so that he could find what he needed to find to get rid of. Okay, well, here's the problem with that. You don't just spray luminol on blood and then it magically glows. Doesn't happen. You see, luminol makes the blood glow after the blood has been activated with a chemical. And the problem with the chemical that activates the blood so that luminol can make it glow is that chemical has a tendency to bleach everything. It's a bleaching agent, much like bleach. And let's look at that chemical because we've already discussed it.
The chemical that activates luminol is hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, which acts as an oxidant, causing the luminol to emit light when mixed in a basic solution. So you have to use hydrogen peroxide to activate the luminol. Now, what does hydrogen peroxide do to your textiles, though? Hydrogen peroxide is an excellent blood stain remover that works well on both fresh and set-in blood stains. However, hydrogen peroxide can have a bleaching effect on some textiles, so it's important to perform a spot test before using it for removal.
So, if he used hydrogen peroxide and sprayed that all over his car to activate the blood so that the luminol would make it glow, well, now he's got a problem. Because the same hydrogen peroxide that made the blood glow would be the same hydrogen peroxide that he would use to get rid of the blood. Or bleach. And we know what bleach does to fabric. Folks, hydrogen peroxide does the same thing. So when law enforcement would have finally got the warrant to search Bryan Kohberger's vehicle, guess what they would have found? They'd have found tons of little bleach spots where he tried to get rid of the evidence. There has been absolutely no sign, word, anything about them finding bleach spots all over his car. And if there was, Ann Taylor wouldn't have said they found no evidence in Bryan Kohberger's car, house, or apartment. So we can put that thing to bed. But the other part to that is the mention of the 404B hearing. That was interesting. Because a 404B hearing, well, first let's talk about what a 404B hearing is, and then I'm going to explain what happened in this court when the prosecution brought up potential 404B hearings.
Okay, you can see crimes, wrongs, or other acts, and you look at number 1, it says prohibited uses, prohibited, and that is evidence of a crime. Wrong or other act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. So, evidence of a crime. There negates the breaking into the chemistry lab. That is evidence of a crime. But they could use notice in a criminal case. This evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive. We know they have no motive. Opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must file and serve reasonable notice of the general nature of any such evidence that the prosecutor intends to offer at trial, and do so reasonably in advance of trial. Or you can see, during the trial, if the court for good case shown excuses lack of pretrial notice. So that means if the judge allows them to ambush them at trial, but them threatening for the 404B is obvious in their intent.
Okay, so there's two things that 404B hearing could potentially be that are logical, okay? Not Bryan Kohberger broke into a chemistry lab right before he committed the atrocity to steal cleaning supplies. That's not logical. That's illogical. The logical things, though, are they could have a 404B hearing to discuss wrongful acts or wrongful behavior. You see, when they got his phone data, I'm absolutely certain that they got record of him text messaging about drug transactions. And we know that's a fact. They're going to know of his drug use. And something that would hurt his character is bringing up the fact that he was involved in drug use. And I've said that in many, many, many videos. That is the thing that makes people think of you less than a citizen, as if you're using drugs. So that would be something that would hurt his character, and a 404B hearing to bring something like that up would be necessary. Now, the other thing that they could bring up, and we know this would be a dastardly thing for them to do, is the young lady who he put security cameras in her apartment on the WSU campus. That one they could actually bring up in a 404B hearing or a motion in limine to discuss potential evidence that could be used at trial. Because that one, if they could somehow show that there was malicious intent, that one would show a propensity in the past to commit acts that were similar to the act in which was committed on King Road. Now, we know if the prosecution goes that route, that it is a very underhanded thing for them to do to Bryan Kohberger, because there is zero evidence that he did anything nefarious other than help that girl do what she asked him to help him do. But they literally may go as far as to say that he possibly broke into her apartment because somebody apparently had broken into her apartment. They could go as far as suggest it was him and he was manipulating her to get her to allow him to put cameras in her apartment. That would be a dastardly underhanded thing for the prosecution to do, but you can bet that's something that they're throwing out there on a little string to the defense as almost a veiled threat. And I'll show you what I mean by that, because here's the little section in the hearing where she talks about the 404B hearing and potential motions in limine. But I want you to look at the context of it, okay? Because she's talking about the media getting so excited around hearing days and it's spiking in its coverage, because this is a motion to transfer venue hearing. And she's making suggestions to keep the hearings sealed and not do open hearings when it comes to evidentiary hearings, because the prosecution doesn't want those hearings open. The defense has already suggested they want those hearings open. They want this information out there. The prosecution doesn't. They want them closed. So as you watch this little section of this hearing, you got to understand what's really going on. You see, this is a card game being played between the defense and the prosecution. And it's if you keep pushing for this, then we're going to do this type thing. but they're doing it in a way, it's a very sly way. It's a veiled threat is what it is. So as you listen to this, think about it like this. The prosecution is threatening the defense with hearings on these matters, wanting something that the defense is wanting, they're wanting them to back off on it. But here's the thing I want you to really pay attention to when you watch this clip. I want you to watch our man, Bryan Kohberger. Because in the past, Bryan Kohberger has sat there, right? Eyes front, stoic. Occasionally he'll look up at his public defender as she's speaking. But other than that, he never even bats an eyebrow at anybody or anything that's going on. When the prosecutor begins to discuss the motion in limine hearings, and she's unveiling a veiled threat at the defense, because you can imagine that Ann Taylor has discussed with Bryan Kohberger potential things the prosecution may do that's underhanded that they have to watch out for. So when he hears things like motion in limine and those veiled threats, you can bet it perks his attention up. So as you watch this clip of the hearing, I want you to pay attention to Bryan Kohberger and watch what he does.
Coverage is sealing some potential hearings coming up. And the defense may not want to seal certain hearings for good reason. We're not asking the court at this point to seal all hearings going forward, but the state believes that there may be certain evidentiary hearings. For example, if the state files 404B notices or motions in limine related to the evidence, some of that information might be extremely prejudicial, and the state would agree to seal hearings where prejudicial information is going to come out in that hearing. And that.
See that? He normally doesn't do that. He looked up at her like, oh, I mean, I could almost read his mind. Oh, you son of a, I can't, you're gonna, and then he does like this. Watch it one more time.
Motions in limine related to the evidence. Some of that information might be extremely prejudicial, and the state would agree to seal hearings where prejudicial information is going to come out.
So that's what the 404B hearings are about. They're not, he broke into a chemistry lab in Washington State. So let's just throw that one to the wind. Now, it's also been broken by Forensic Frenzy that the change of venue has been granted. Now, we don't know that, but she says she has a credible inside source. I mean, I imagine it's the Gonzalez family, and they've let her know that, yeah, he has granted the change of venue. And one thing I mentioned to my members earlier, and I shouldn't have done that, I should have went and read my own information, because I put out a video about the court docs a couple of weeks ago on the 16th, I believe, where I explained how they were going to try to get this thing moved to Lewiston and Nez Perce. And I went through how the judge was the district judge, but he was also the head of the judicial district judges in the area. And I mentioned that the only way this thing would go to the Supreme Court, they can't put it on the Supreme Court to make a decision. I mean, you can't. The judge doesn't go, okay, I'm going to change the venue, but too scared to make this decision. Supreme Court, you take it. Make the decision for me. That doesn't happen. But if the case is going to be transferred outside of his judicial district, well, that's when the administrator, the judge has to, here, let me show you how it works. I've already did this in the previous video. I'm going to show you one more time.
Okay, a transfer within a judicial district. And that is if the case is transferred to a specific court or proper venue within the second district, and continue assignment over the case unless the administrative judge reassigns the case to another judge in the judicial district. We've already established that John Judge is the administrative district judge for the second district. So he would obviously assign the case to himself, because he is the guy that would do that. But it changes if you go outside of the second district. If you change to a different judicial district, then the original judge, if he desires to continue the assignment over the case, he can indicate it in the order, suggesting a court of proper venue. So he has to suggest in his order where to go. And then he refers it to the administrative director of the courts. And then they assign it to the Supreme Court to judge whether or not the judge continues to preside, or do they change the judge to a different judge? So the administrative director of the court turns it over to the Supreme Court to decide if he stays on the case or if they put a new judge on the case. But he has to change to the venue, and he has to pick the venue it changes to before he can turn it over to the administrative director for assignment by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court simply rules, does the judge stay or go? That is it.
So if it changes to, say, Boise, then the judge has to get with the administrator to get the Supreme Court to either accept him as continuing to be the judge or pick a new judge. But they don't pick the venue. You know, the venue, he picks the venue, and then the Supreme Court would either allow him to continue being the judge or they would pick another judge. Now, I believe that Frenzy has got some accurate information here, except for the second part. I still don't believe it. I believe that my video on the Nez Perce thing was a pretty impactful video for this court. Y'all think I'm crazy? You think I don't matter that much, a lot of you? I assure you, when I put out a video like that explicitly showing how they're trying to get this thing moved to Nez Perce County Courthouse, and they have been for a long time, that had to pucker them up. It had to pucker them up. I still believe that they're going to try to get this thing to Lewiston at the Nez Perce County Courthouse. I believe it with all my heart, and I'm still keeping that prediction, even though what Frenzy's saying is it's going elsewhere. I think it's smoke and mirrors. I think that second part of the information that she got was put out there to make it look like it's a big deal, and they're going to try to muddy the waters on, well, it might go here, the Supreme Court might decide this. In the end, I'm still predicting it's going to end up in Lewiston at the Nez Perce County Courthouse, and John Judge will still be the judge. But folks, please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, your criticisms. Until next time, Pavarotti's out.